Good morning, Jamaica. It is Thursday, November 6, 2025, and we're here for another special briefing on Hurricane Melissa and the relief efforts that are underway. We have a lot of people with us this morning. If I missed you, we were not told that you were coming. So I want to acknowledge my colleague ministers, the Honorable Daryl, our Minister of Energy, Telecommunications and Transport. On ways, Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness. We also have, I think I saw in the room, Minister Pernell Charles Jr., Senator the Honorable Keith Duncan. We also have with us two PSs, Ambassador Rocky Mead and also Dr. Kassan Troop. We have the Chief of Defense Staff with us, Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems-Gorman, which we're very happy to have with us this morning. We also have Commander Alvin Gayle, Director General, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. We also have representatives from the private sector, including, I saw him come in, Mr. Metriciaga, who is the President of the PSOJ. We also have Emil Leiber, who is the President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. And we have Catherine Silveira, the President of the JMEA. With us, we also have Hugh Grant and many team members from the JPS, other members of ministries, members of the media, everyone who's watching, good morning again. I know there's a lot of interest and there are a lot of questions that the media have for the teams that are here. We're going to get through the updates as quickly as we can and leave some time for questions. I will note that immediately after this, there is a cabinet meeting that is scheduled. If anything comes out of that cabinet meeting that is important to pass on, I will do so after that cabinet meeting. But we have to keep it tight because of cabinet. I just needed to note one thing before we start in relation to relief efforts and coordination, and you're going to hear some more of it in some of the updates. But a key update for you is that UN OPS has been, based on our request, on the request of the government of Jamaica, UN OPS is here, and UN OPS is going to be assisting us in coordinating the relief efforts that are afoot. Now that's very important. They have a lot of experience in terms of coordination. And as you would see in Jamaica, I know when I went to the airport, Minister Vaz has facilitated a lot of flights. Minister Vaz, you can tell us how many flights you facilitated. But there's a lot of goods and equipment coming into the country and going to many different donor agencies. There are so many donor agencies that are operating in Jamaica. And the key thing is we want to have everything joined up and coordinated. And so that's why we're using international experts through UN OPS to assist the country. So the government has invited UN OPS to help us to coordinate not just government, but also the plethora of private donor entities that are operating in the country. The key thing is we want to get goods and food to those who need it. Sometimes you have multiple donor agencies going to the same community. So what you want is to have that much better coordinated, and we thank the United Nations for their support in that respect. In terms of ODPEM, the Prime Minister would have announced the movement of ODPEM to OPM. That's a signal of how important disaster risk management and response is very to the administration. And so that move has been made. The first person you're going to hear from this morning is our new head of ODPEM. And just to give you a little bit of context, we're in a national crisis. And the key thing is synergy. Just like I was talking about having the coordination between all of the donors and government, we have to do that on a much wider scale in terms of many of the other aspects of relief. And so because of that and because of the importance of the JDF, and the Chief of Defense Staff is here, they've been doing tremendous work, the JDF, and they have the logistics experience. And for that reason, it made sense to have ODPEM with the JDF. And so in us having Commander Gayle now take charge of ODPEM, you're going to see even better synergies going forward, and you're going to see the kind of joined up approach much more seamlessly executed. And so having said that, I now ask for us to welcome Commander Gayle. And I'll tell you, Commander Gayle is not just someone we've taken and put in this position. While I was at ODPEM before the hurricane, during the hurricane, Commander Gayle was one of those persons who never left the center, the Emergency Operations Center. So he knows what has happened. He has been there supporting. He was there when the calls were coming in while the hurricane was affecting communities really, really in a significant way. And he was assisting with taking those calls, assisting in getting persons out to help those who were seeing flooded situations and were fearing flooding. So he's not someone that is new to this. He has been a part of the process. I have been impressed with him every single conversation. I used to call him to get updates on the death toll, and he was always super professional, and I was always saying to him, I'm very glad that we had him as a part of our disaster risk framework. And so, Commander Gayle, Jamaica is looking forward to you doing big things. I will soon stop talking so that you will take over all these press briefings eventually and report to Jamaica. And that's the plan, is that he will have command of everything. And so most of the updates will be coming from him as he takes up his role. Commander Gayle? No pressure.
Ministers, permanent secretaries, agency representatives, members of the media, the people of Jamaica, both here and abroad, good morning. It is an honor this morning to address you in my new capacity as the Director General of the ODPEM. I am deeply aware of the trust that Jamaica has placed in my office to coordinate Jamaica's comprehensive disaster management response efforts and to ensure that the nation remains prepared, responsive, and resilient in this disaster and others to come. The passage of Hurricane Melissa has left significant damage across the parishes of Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. Elizabeth. The ODPEM has been coordinating a multinational, multi-agency response to the National Emergency Operations Center, which remains fully activated in the offices of the ODPEM. Local agencies, local ministries, the Jamaica Defense Force, Jamaica Constabulary Force, Jamaica Fire Brigade, National Works Agency, Jamaica Public Service or telecoms providers, other NGOs have all been inside the NEOC working for Jamaicans. This collaborative effort under our framework brings together these agencies to provide a comprehensive and effective response to this disaster. It also emphasizes the matter of collaboration and asset sharing to maximize the effects. I know today Jamaica has many questions, so it is my intent to take them squarely on the head today and address the pressing ones now. First and most importantly, we mourn those we've lost. The official number of confirmed fatalities pertinent to Hurricane Melissa now stands at 32. Our hearts are with the families and communities grieving those lost, and we are providing necessary support to them during this difficult time. Our initial damage assessment indicates that over some 120,000 buildings in Western Jamaica have lost their roofs. This directly impacts some 90,000 families. We are acutely aware that many communities are still marooned, cut off by flooding and landslides. I can report that through the efforts of the Jamaica Defense Force, the National Works Agency, the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and others, we successfully re-established access to many of these communities. However, as of this morning, there is some indication that some 27 communities remain marooned, primarily in the difficult-to-reach areas of St. Elizabeth, St. James, and Trelawney. The ODPEM, alongside other local agencies, and with the assistance from our international partners, are making every effort to conclude on the initial damage assessment reports, the rapid needs assessment, to determine the full extent of the damage across Jamaica. This will help the government to understand the needs as we prepare to transition to a recovery phase. A number of shelters have been closed as persons are returning to their communities, whilst the data from some shelters is limited due to communication challenges. However, as of 10 p.m. last evening, a total of 184 shelters remain open. Some 2,487 persons have been displaced into these shelters, primarily from the St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, and Hanover areas. It is our commitment that no one will be forgotten, as the ODPEM is coordinating through the JDF and our international partners, airlift as well as dedicated ground teams to deliver food, water, medical supplies to these locations. We will not stop until every single person who is affected is reached. A massive relief operation is in full swing. If the question on the minds is that, is help coming, the answer is yes. A unified team is carrying out this effort. Through the efforts of the ODPEM, the MLSS, the JDF, over some 36,000 food packages have been delivered. Thousands of hot meals, hygiene kits, tarpaulin, cases of water have been issued throughout the island. And more is coming. Through the JDF, with the support of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the private sector, the ODPEM has established under the JDF a large reception, staging, onward movement and integration operation to transport supplies to the final destination to the people who need it. We continue to clear significant amounts of humanitarian aid supplies at our airports and seaports successfully. International partners are on the ground with our teams. This is also a global effort, and we are deeply grateful to our international partners for the support thus far. As I close, I will indicate that if there's anyone out there who requires assistance or has critical information to share, please contact the ODPEM. Our teams are standing by 24/7 to respond. The ODPEM's National Emergency Operations Center, contact number 876-906-7668, 876-967-1105. Also toll-free access, 888-225-5637. You can also email the ODPEM at neoc@odpem.org.jm. You can also follow us on all our social media pages. In closing, I want to reiterate that the ODPEM is running a 24-hour operation. Every agency of government is in lockstep. The private sector and our international partners are by our side. We are making progress every day in restoring power, telecommunications, water, clearing roads, and delivering aid. As the Director General, my message to you is this: we understand that these have been some challenging times, and we acknowledge the challenges faced. Please know that the ODPEM's response is one that is committed, coordinated, and determined. We are fully engaged in a comprehensive multi-agency effort across the island to provide effective relief and restore services whilst prioritizing the country's needs. We will persist until every Jamaican is met. Thank you, and may God bless Jamaica.
And as I said, you're going to be seeing a lot more of Commander Gayle as he takes over a lot of the coordination efforts. So thank you, Commander. Up next, we're going to have, and as I said, I know the room is really, really super full. We'll try to get seats for everybody who wants seats. We want to get as quickly as possible through the updates. And so, ministers, asking you to help me to make those quick. I know we have cabinet and we need to leave some time for questions from the media. All right, Minister Vaz, everybody looks forward to your updates. And so we're looking forward to your updates. And JPS, I know, will be included in your update. You'll be giving some info on that. And that's another one that a lot of Jamaicans want to know about.
Morning to Jamaica, morning to my colleague ministers, permanent secretaries, heads of agencies, head of the JDF, and of course, all others who are in the room here. So, as the country continues to recover from Hurricane Melissa, here are some updates on the most important areas of restoration. Our fuel supply network is stabilizing quickly, with full service resumed at West Indies Petroleum from October 27. Most gas stations are opening back in the West, and I'm happy to say for those areas that are still not getting the regular service from the petrol stations. On Monday, we have 10 mobile fuel stations that will go out to specific areas guided to me by the JDF and ODPEM that will be able to set up and operate on generators and will also be able to sell kerosene, which is very, very important at this time. But I expect that most, based on the report, most petrol stations are reopening and have made arrangements to be able to supply, especially in the hardest hit areas. We are arranging for police escorts to navigate the traffic and also for security reasons as well. As it relates to road clearance and access, access has now been restored along key corridors across the island, connecting Ocherius to Port Antonio, Morant Bay to Kingston, Mandeville to Black River, and through to Negril and through to Montego Bay. This progress has been vital in enabling supplies, relief items, essential workers to reach affected communities. However, some interior routes in St. Elizabeth and St. James and Westmoreland are still limited to single-lane traffic due to fallen trees and flooding. National Works Agency crews are prioritizing full two-lane clearance for key routes connecting rural communities to Montego Bay and Savla-Mar. Telcos, most of Jamaica's community and public Wi-Fi networks are offline, particularly in western parishes, affecting over 150 communities. To restore connectivity, the Universal Service Fund is deploying Starlink satellite solutions, starting with Betheltown, Westmoreland, and rolling 15 installations over the next week. Mobile units are also being deployed to provide Wi-Fi and charging stations in affected communities. Over the next 6 weeks, USF aims to deliver at least 90 community connectivity solutions in the affected areas, meaning people will be able to stay in their communities and communicate. Starting today, the JDF is airlifting Starlink units and generators into isolated communities to establish community Wi-Fi hubs and support humanitarian operations. Starlink is being used to restore mobile backhaul for phone and digital towers in the west, helping to connect 250,000 people in the affected areas. In addition, hospitals and emergency services are now using Starlink to stay connected, request supplies, and coordinate relief and more. We got 600 Starlink, 400 fixed, and 200 mobiles last week, Friday night. And I'm pleased to say that all have been given out in priority order for the affected areas. Sorry. Some would want 20, but we could only give them 10. But we're making sure that the next batch we will give optimum to all of the relief agencies that require. I'm making a public appeal to those government entities, agencies, NGOs that are being allocated these. They're of no use unless they are activated. If they are not activated, they are of no use. And I cannot get more if Starlink sees that there's no activity on the 600. As of yesterday, there was about 30%. So I'm calling on all heads of agencies, permanent secretaries, ministers, NGOs who have received these to please instruct for immediate installation and activation. As of Thursday, November 6th, Flow has restored 80% of pre-hurricane mobile traffic, with priority given to the hardest hit areas and key towns, including Negril, Savla-Mar, Falmouth, Black River. Efforts are now focused on restoring mobile services in other less affected areas. For fixed internet, 42% of Flow customers are now online, with another 23% able to connect once power is restored. Kingston and St. Andrew has 83% of customers that can already access internet. That's important, Jamaica, because we are the epicenter in Kingston for government and for all sorts of relief. So having full service in Kingston and St. Andrew is very, very useful. Electricity, Mr. Hugh Grant is here. I prefer Jamaica to hear directly from them. as I had committed before. And just to say that I got a brief this morning, which I know he will mention, in relation to the assets that he's having difficulties in getting to Jamaica. I'm sure by now he'd have gotten some calls, and we will get it done. We will get that. You have the assets ready, and we will get a ship, wherever it is, to bring them in the shortest possible time. Transportation, JUTC continues to assist for disaster relief supplies and also for personnel, both government-related and those NGOs who are requesting transportation. We are doing so free of cost. This is the big one now. Airports and ports. At Sangster International Airport, as of November 5th, 2025, 49 flights were staged, including 22 passenger and 27 cargo. For November 6th today, 31 flights are scheduled, all passenger and cargo operations. And at Norman Manley International Airport, as you know, operations have resumed, and on November 5th, 48 flights operated, including passenger, cargo, and military and private flights, with 42 flights scheduled for November 6th. Importantly, no scheduled flights have been cancelled at both airports in recent times. The Port of Kingston has fully reopened. Kingston Wharves provided 10,000 square foot of warehouse for the JDF for humanitarian aid, and of course, free port services for relief vessels and discounted handling for relief cargo to speed up deliveries to the west. All major harbors across Jamaica have now been safely reopened, with Kingston Harbour was the first to resume operations on October 29th, followed by Montego Bay, Portland Bight, Rocky Point on October 31st, Rio Bueno and Discovery Bay on November 1st, while Ocho Rios, Falmouth and Port Antonio resumed on November 3rd. The toll remains open, and that is a situation that I have evaluated very carefully. The Fern Gully, which is the only other access outside of the junction St. Mary, which is not an option, is still single-lane traffic and has severe flooding issues. Therefore, it is important that the aid that's going to St. Anne, Trelawney, Montego Bay, Hanover have access to a good road network. I will announce in due course when the toll will be reinstated. As for East-West, which is going towards Manchester, down into St. Elizabeth, down into Westmoreland, that is where a lot of the relief operations are taking place by road, and therefore it is the position of the government that we must facilitate that to be able to get quick and speedy recovery. I will close because everybody else will speak on the other matters that I would have normally spoken on. Just to say that in my discussions this morning at our 8:30 meeting, it has been confirmed that we have about 21 or 22 helicopter assets. And have been confirmed by the JDF that that is sufficient to carry out the relief side of the operations. So we have no shortage of the assets in the air. What we are doing now, in our second week, is to streamline the relief operations in terms of the logistics. And we had an excellent meeting this morning that will continue. Private sector is working tirelessly with the government, international agencies. I'm sure that you will hear from ODPEM, obviously, on some changes that have been made, not only in management, but in also systems and structures. And to say that I'm very happy to see former UK High Commissioner Asif Ahmad here, who has come this morning in his Jamaica tie to help and work with the private sector and ODPEM to give us some of his well-needed experience. Congratulations on the appointment, sir, and I look forward to working closely with you in the days, weeks, and years, months and years to come to rebuild Jamaica bigger and better. God bless Jamaica.
Thank you, Minister. Is it a long update?
3 minutes.
Okay, I will time you. Mr. Grant, 3 minutes. Everybody wants to know when they are going to get back electricity. And I know this is earlier. In the last press briefing, we said he'd come back in 1 week time, but Minister Vaz has invited him earlier.
Okay, thanks. I'll be very, very, very brief. Good morning to all ministers present, partners, members of the media, and to you, Jamaica. I had some images I wanted to show of the damage. Is it able to get that up? But we'll just keep moving in the interest of time. So we have been making significant progress in regards to our overall restoration. Right after the passage of Hurricane Melissa, we had in the order of 23% of customers in. To date, we have over 55% of customers in service. That's over 380,000 customers. We have been prioritizing our restoration around key areas, particularly areas that have critical customers, and that has been a coordinated effort with key partners. Okay, got it. Thank you. Particularly with key partners. So if you think about how are we doing so far, I want to break the island up into, say, 5 categories in regards to our restoration. So in the parishes of St. Mary and St. Anne, we continue to make progress there. But if you think about the analogy of, say, a river, whereby you have a source with a generator, and then that source has a main channel, which is a river. That's a main stream. That main channel then goes to a substation, that's a reservoir. That reservoir then goes ahead and feeds streams and creeks. Those are the distribution lines that you see on the road, and then those streams and creeks then goes ahead and feed your home. What happened as a result of Beryl is that main river, that main river ran dry, whereby significant damage on that infrastructure. So as a result, we're focusing our efforts on restoring that particular main river. So if you look here at some of the damages that you may see, this is what it looks like in terms of the damage across the island. Significant damage. During Beryl, we did not see this type of extensive damage. So we focused on establishing, during Beryl, we did not see that extensive damage. So during now, with Melissa, we focused on restoring that main river. And we have been making progress. At the start, we had over 75% of that main river dry. Right now, we have more than 25% restored, so less than 50% is dry. But we got to get that river up in order to supply many of the key areas. So where is it that we have that main river dry? It's dry in areas out in the western part of the island. So you think about Hanover, St. James, also the midsection, St. Elizabeth. Those areas, the river is dry. So we focused on that. But I have good news for you. We were able to start one of our engines, generators in that western area. That's up and running and prepared to start supplying a source once we're able to establish that main river, which is good news. So we continue to make progress there. So as we think about, this clicker is not working or responding. Okay, here we go. That's the Bogue power plant that you see there, that's up and running out west. It's a bit slow, but as we move through the various groups, right? So St. Mary and St. Anne, we're making good progress there. Assessment is going well. Critical facilities, we have our eyes on Port Maria Hospital, St. Anne's Hospital, and town centers, and we will get to you. As we move on from St. Anne, we're now in the areas of Portland, Clarendon, and Manchester. The good news is we have restored more than 60% of Portland, more than 65% of Clarendon, more than 40% of Manchester. We continue to assess, and we're moving forward in those areas whereby in a matter of weeks, we're looking to have greater restoration in those particular areas. As I mentioned before, in the areas of Trelawney, Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and Hanover, there is no river. So the key there is to establish that river. Once we establish that river, we already have the source, which is the supply out west in Bogue, and then we can start providing that needed power. We currently operate in the island in 2 separate systems, one out west and one out east, in order to facilitate more timely restoration as we go ahead and as we move forward. I just want to touch on the parish of St. James, whereby there's also very severely damaged. But we also recognize that's a major economic center for the country. So we continue to work through plans to facilitate safe and timely restoration of the St. James and in particular Montego Bay. So we have the generation there. We're now working to establish that main river. After we establish that main river, which is severely damaged, we'll then continue to establish the streams and the creeks and get power to the key economic centers, to hospitals, to the water pumps, and other critical facilities. So we continue to make progress, and we continue to really work it to ensure that we can go ahead and establish that main river. So as we continue to focus on the restoration, one of the key things are our critical sites. We have been partnering with very important partners. I want to make a special call out right now to Minister Bartlett. He was able to assist us in actually getting some rooms for some of the overseas line workers that we're bringing in. Today, we're bringing in over 100 line workers from overseas. That's going to bring us to more than 230. So that's a good thing. I want to thank Minister Tufton for the partnership with the Ministry of Education. Minister Vaz, I know I spoke to you this morning in regards to getting health. Minister Vaz, I know I spoke with you this morning in regards to getting more vehicles here and the vessels so that we can get them in, and that's also a good thing. So as I close and I wrap, let me just say this. I want to say a special thanks to both our residential and business customers. Thanks for your patience and understanding. Thanks to all the partners across government. I also want to thank all the first responders out on the front lines with us, and we remain committed to working 24/7 to restoring every customer, and we'll continue to keep you updated. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. As you see, JPS is working, and he's being facilitated a lot by Minister Vaz and some of the efforts there. One of the things that we were getting online, some people don't understand this language of the river. What he's saying in simple terms is that they have their generating facility, but getting from there to the communities, that's what's broken. That's what he's calling the river. So getting it moving into the communities is what they are working on. So they're saying that in terms of their ability to get it out, they've gotten that back up, but their ability to take it into the communities is not there yet. And they are working really, really hard. And as you heard, there are more linesmen coming in to support them. And so we thank JPS for all their efforts in getting electricity back. And I know, as he said, he's been working with the Ministry of Health and Education and many of the other areas to get service back. Having said health, it's time for Minister Tufton, and he's been doing so many things. I see field hospitals going up. I see the teams working. And of course, Minister, on behalf of all Jamaicans, I want you to convey to our nurses and our doctors and everybody who works in a hospital, how grateful we are to them. It's been difficult circumstances, but they never stopped working. And so thank you, Minister, and thanks to your team too.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Morning, colleagues, and all of the persons who are here. So the following is an update on health. The field hospital in St. Elizabeth has commenced operations. I checked this morning. They have seen about 50 patients over the past 24 hours. It's an accident and emergency facility with a number of services, 13 patient beds, operating theater room, surgical procedure, emergency room, obstetric and maternal and neonatal care, and lab and pharmacy services and blood bank. So it's a full-fledged operation and it's now active on the ground, which is a very positive thing. It's equipped by about 60 professionals which came in from the US, but they are also teaming up with our local doctors. So it's a combined effort in terms of the response. Supporting the hospital services is also a field clinic, for want of a better word. So we're mounting a primary healthcare facility on the grounds of the Black River Health Center. It's taking place as we speak. What that will allow for is a triaging process of the non-essential cases, because everybody will come to the hospital. Not everybody needs that kind of service. So that facility will be up hopefully by today, and then once it commences services, the health team, both the local health team and the supporting health team will be there. That will provide very critical services in the parish of Black River, well, the town of Black River, supporting the parish. Beyond that, yesterday I went to the airport with the Spanish ambassador, EU ambassador, and representatives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, to meet 76 citizens of Spain, doctors, nurses, technicians, engineers. They are also going to be deploying a field hospital. I understand that it's on its way now from Kingston, should be in Falmouth by now. And we're hoping over the next couple of days, a second full-fledged field hospital will be mounted in Falmouth with all the services of emergency care, surgery, pediatrics, traumatology, physiotherapy, psychology, general anesthetic services, radiology services, lab pharmacy, sterilization, and so on. So a full-fledged facility, the second field hospital. We're hoping tomorrow I'll visit that site, and we're hoping that that will be up and running. That will take a lot of pressure off the Falmouth Hospital, but will serve beyond Falmouth. It could go over into St. James, depending on where the challenges are. So that's a positive development, and we want to thank the people of Spain and the European Union for that collaboration. We're working on a third field hospital to be deployed at the Cornwall Regional Hospital in Montego Bay. This one is a discussion which I'm told is close to finalization with the people and government of Barbados, which will be flown into the island hopefully sometime soon. That will also come with all the things that I've just described for the previous ones, and that will provide critical support for the Cornwall Regional operation and the people in St. James. And I will provide more details on that once we get those details. The Sablamar Hospital is continuing its emergency support services. We have one post that is mounted there by a medical team, a NGO. They have gotten their certification and they will start operating this morning. And again, they will provide critical support for triaging of patients who don't require emergency care. We're looking at the possibility of expanding the services at the Sablamar Hospital. Some discussions are taking place, but too early to make any definitive statement. As far as White House in Westmoreland is concerned, the eastern side of the parish, which was ravaged by the hurricane, we are working with Samaritan's Purse to locate a tier 1, for better understanding, a field health center at that location from where we will operate to go into the hills and give support from that base. We are exploring the possibility of a field hospital between White House and Belmont, and some conversations are taking place with some possible partners to see if that is possible. So it wouldn't be located at a hospital site as the others are being located. It would be a separate, standalone facility because that area was ravaged terribly, and the logistics of movement into Sav or Black River, as the case may be difficult. So we'd like to look at expanding our services there. In terms of pharmacy services, we have begun mobile pharmacy units managed by the National Health Fund, and they have been out. So far, the unit, these are multiple mobile units now. They have gone into Black River, Slipe, Grove, and Brompton in St. Elizabeth, in St. James. They have visited Maroon Town, Negril and Little London in Westmoreland, and those efforts are continuing. Location for mobile services include Newmarket, Pepper in St. Elizabeth, Darliston in Westmoreland, Ramble in Hanover, and we'll offer pharmacy services at Granville Health Centre in St. James and at the Prattville Health Centre in Manchester. The NHF is now building out its ecosystem. What we're doing is mapping the secondary healthcare infrastructure to determine where they were badly damaged and taken out of commission, and then placing on top of that the possibility of the temporary field health center structure, which will be accompanied by both local and those volunteering coming into the island once they're certified to give the community-based support. So once we develop the emergency services, then we are focusing now on the primary healthcare services, which is the community services, and that involves providing medication and critical care to those individuals in those communities. And that has started and will continue and will be expanded over time. In terms of vector control, the team are out. We do anticipate an increase in vector-related activity, whether it's rodents or mosquitoes. 413 temporary workers are engaged, and we're going to be supporting those temporary workers with 498 permanent staff. And you will see and feel and hear more of them in the communities in the coming days, because we do expect over the next week or so, particularly in the areas where we have no electricity, that's going to be an issue. And there's always the risk of dengue caused by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Just to note, that's only one species of several species, and so we are monitoring and testing to determine exactly what the species are and how we deal with them. The same applies to the public health inspectors. They have been mobilized, are in the field looking at food, the food chain. We have already condemned a fair bit of food that is to be refrigerated and can't be refrigerated, and also doing water testing. All of that in aid of preventing infections or diseases from food or water. Last Sunday, we had a team of 200 that went to visit the 5 hospitals from Kingston, healthcare workers. And it was really a good show of solidarity and support for those healthcare workers who have been impacted. They helped with the cleanup. They're going back this weekend to those affected areas to continue to assist in terms of the cleanup and restoration. Moving fast in the interest of time. This week we had a donor and partner support meeting. Ministry of Health met with in conjunction with the Pan American Health Organization, met with a number of donors, I think over 30. And these are organizations, both local and overseas, NGOs, multilateral, bilateral partners. So we have basically brought all under one umbrella. I'm saying this to say, for those who have an interest in supporting the health response, there is a central secretariat that will coordinate that, and that's very important to avoid confusion and to ensure that the coordination is intact. There is an email, hurricaneresponse@moh.gov.jm. That's hurricaneresponse@moh.gov.gm, that you can send any request, any offer of support for health to, and we will direct it appropriately. And the final point is on mental health and psychosocial support. We now have a PAHO expert who I met with yesterday. There is a plan to engage all our field officers, not just our psychiatrists and psychiatric support teams, but all our field officers who will be in the field to discern where necessary the need for some sort of psychosocial support to persons who have been traumatized in this activity. We will have a base at each hospital, and so it will involve some amount of training or orientation, And we are seeking volunteers, so persons who may have training in this area can use this email to reach out, and we would be happy to incorporate them into creating this army of mental health practitioners or support team, because we have seen and anticipate that the mental trauma on persons who have been victims of the storm will only get worse, and we need to be there to offer that kind of support. Thank you very much.
Minister wanted to know if you can go to cabinet now and leave me. No, you're gonna go over with me, but if you have to go, you can go. We do have one more presentation this morning, and just note, we have other ministers who are here, other individuals are here that can take questions. If you're here, it means you can take a question. And so we have the Chief of Defense Staff here, we have our Minister of Labor and Social Security here also that can take questions. JPS, there's some questions for you in the chat. They want some timelines, so I'm giving you a precursor to the question that's in the chat rooms. And so now we have a man who has agreed to not just be senator, but also to help the private sector to work more closely with government, and that's very important. When we're in a crisis, it's a crisis for all of Jamaica. And I think I want to thank the private sector, especially for you being here today. It does show that you are standing with the government, you are committed to making things better for all Jamaicans wherever you can. And we have to say thank you. And Senator Duncan has been working very closely, and everybody in the private sector has been doing what they can to help. And so, Keith Duncan, you're next.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. So, as chair of this private sector task force, firstly, I would like to just acknowledge that since the passage of this devastating Category 5 Melissa, we have to acknowledge the pain and suffering that as Jamaicans have experienced. That and is real pain, real suffering. We have lost loved ones. Jamaicans at home and abroad have been trying to find family members, friends in the communities because we're out of communication. Thousands and thousands have lost their homes, their businesses, their income. Many have lost everything. In spite of this unimaginable pain and suffering, you hear our Jamaican brothers and sisters saying, once there's life, there is hope. That is the common thing you hear. Once there's life, there's hope. But I have to acknowledge our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, our police, the military, the firemen, as they have worked tirelessly around the clock to save lives and bring comfort to people. And acknowledge the NWA, the JDF, the private citizens with them cutlass, clearing roads to provide access to communities that are marooned. I'd like to express gratitude to the GOJ, the public servants, because we start off a little shaky because anybody get licked by a Category 5, you must shake up. And it's coming together now. It is coming together, the relief effort. It is coming together, and the relief and recovery effort that I'm speaking to. It is taking shape, and it's moving in the right direction. But we have a taskmaster by the name of the Honorable Minister Daryl Vaz. This guy don't stop. He keeps us on task. We try and bring a little structure to it and then him keep us going again and we have to catch up again. So I'd like to acknowledge this man, ladies and gentlemen, for his efforts. Round the clock. Thank you very much, sir. Respect is due. We have to thank the international community for how they have responded also. With all the support that they're bringing in. I was at a meeting last night with the PS and many others. There were over 100 international people at that meeting. And they are slowly pulling their thing together into a structured manner. It's OCHA. And we will be trying to integrate our efforts to work closely, because if we synergize, we get better results and greater impact. I think you have started the MLSS because, as we said, we started off at the JDF in our distribution channels, and they have worked tirelessly to pull it together. Sometimes because, but at the end of the day, what we're working for is the greatest possible impact, okay? The private sector now, we have been working in several areas. First area is we have to support the JDF in their build-out of the hub and spoke that the Prime Minister spoke to in terms of the relief distribution aid. Providing logistics support, warehouse space, we have provided warehouse space, we have provided equipment, trucking, transportation, as they build out this multi-purpose distribution model across Jamaica. As I said, we're mobilizing for access, chainsaws. We're bringing in chainsaws because we don't have enough chainsaws, and there are no more chainsaws in Jamaica. Earth-moving equipment to open up roads and access to the maroon communities. The private sector groupings under the leadership of Mitra Siaga, Catherine Silveira, and Emile Leiber have set up an emergency operations center with the help of Lisa Suarez-Lewis to coordinate the efforts to, one, as a primary objective, to get businesses back up and running and economic activity going. So working in tandem with everybody who is out there doing the work and clearing roads, getting light back in, getting water back in, the private sector is toe-to-toe working that through. And I'd like to acknowledge the leadership of the private sector who is here, Mr. Mitra Siaga. We also have worked out the supply chain, and that has been in terms of the relief aid, the food, the water, the shelter, the building supplies. That's a supply chain thing that we're working through with the MLSS, who is in charge of procurement. We have, as I said, we have established a National Emergency Operations Center within the private sector, and that is it is a coordinated effort at the private sector. The PSOJ, JME, and the JCC have joined forces to establish a tax-free donation fund along with the Council of Voluntary Social Services to purchase care packages on behalf of for our brothers and sisters who are in these communities. Volunteerism is also important. We just want to thank the volunteers and
ladies and
Minister
gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, PM. And you can continue. You can finish up.
Honorable PM, welcome, sir. But, so I'm saying, it's not an easy road, and it will not be an easy road. The private sector, under the leadership of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the PSOJ, the JMEA, the parish associations, MSMEs, the small and medium enterprises, we are fully activated, working collaboratively with the government and our NGOs and our international partners to save lives, restore livelihoods, rebuild our economy, and construct a stronger, more resilient Jamaica. As the Jamaican people say, where there's life, there is hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Keith, and thank you to all of the members of the private sector for your support. It is very much appreciated. As I said, all hands on deck across the country. And now we are going to be hearing from someone who wasn't on the flyer, but who is really leading us all and has been working non-stop to coordinate all of us, especially as cabinet ministers. And so I ask you to welcome our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, Jamaica. We are officially out of the preparation phase. We have done well in the preparation phase. But even the best laid plans would be laid to waste in a Category 5 hurricane. It's as if you have gotten a knockout blow and you are trying to reconstitute, get yourself up off the mat to say, what do I do next? And that was kind of like the impact of Hurricane Melissa. So in the initial phases of the relief phase, it was almost as if it were a scramble. What is the relief phase? The relief phase is that period of time when the authorities of the government, the civil society, private sector, and others seek to mobilize relief for those who are most impacted. What is that kind of relief we're talking about? Food, water, medicine, clothing, emergency shelter, and services, medical services, search and rescue, or in most cases now, search and recovery of bodies. Other services as well, psychological and emotional, the mental health services. And in our case, the desperate effort to restore some form of connectivity. Because the loss of connection has also been significant, which adds to the emotional and mental health crisis that we face. Persons trying to get in touch with loved ones, persons feeling disconnected, who have for almost all their lives relied upon being able to pick up the phone and call a loved one. So in the initial few days, there was a scramble. And that scramble essentially was, my hand is up, I need help, and the system trying to respond to the loudest voices or the most frantic wave of hands. As of today, we are out of that phase. Now, a systematic response will take over in the relief effort. And you would see that the government has made certain actions to ensure that there is a systematic response. Let me say it in another way. I hear the cry of every baby that is now hungry in a community that is not yet reached. It goes to bed with me. And I have to think of it in this way. Do I try myself to jump on a helicopter with a package to reach the baby that is crying? Or do I try to develop a system to get more helicopters in, to get more packages put together, to get more supplies in, to get more support to be able to reach those babies that are crying? While at the same time saying to Keith and Daryl and Minister Tufton, get out there in the scramble. And so that is what you have been seeing. People individually going out there trying to relieve the human suffering. But that is not a sustainable response. The sustainable response is what you would see the government doing now. One, we have to streamline ODPEM, both as the Office of Disaster Preparedness, which that function was done, that phase is over, and now we are in the phase of the emergency management, which is the relief. Now, let's just be clear. The government can't stand up ODPEM with its own parallel structure of having all the people that would be necessary to pack the relief items, to load the trucks, to move the trucks to where they have to be stored, to clear the roads, all those little minor functions that make the big service works, and keep them and pay them throughout the year for every year, even when there is no disaster. Where that capability exists is in the JDF. It is a multifunctional capability. And so we have to, and at this point, I do commend the JDF and, of course, the JCF as well. The JDF is the repository of the logistics and engineering capabilities of the government. And in hindsight, as I reflect on how we have executed policy, not many Jamaicans would know this, but in the last 10 years of my administration, we have invested heavily in the JDF. In fact, we have doubled the size of the JDF, both in terms of men and women, material, equipment, and technology. We made an investment a few years ago in expanding our fleet of helicopters. expanding our offshore patrol vessels, expanding our radars, expanding our communications, increasing the number of bushmasters, and expanding the number of units that are in the JDF. Today, it is paying off. The logistical capability of the JDF is certainly best in class in the region. And that is what is giving us now the horsepower to be able to deal with a Category 5 level disaster. So the JDF gives the legs and arms to the management functions of the emergency. So it makes sense that there is seamless coordination between the JDF and ODPEM. And therefore, you would recognize the movement of ODPEM to OPM, where the JDF is already under the portfolio of the Office of the Prime Minister. The administration of the JDF as well, which was formerly under National Security, will also move to the Office of the Prime Minister. And we have appointed someone to now head the JDF, the ODPEM, seconded from the JDF. So we expect that there will be seamless operations. Why is this so? In the relief phase, there may be a sense that we will do this for a few weeks. I want to just bring everybody's mind to the reality that this will be a few months operation. And that the country needs to understand this. We have relief entities here. Some of them are capable of carrying out long-term relief. But most of them are not capable to carry out long-term relief and will take up stumps and leave the theater of operations after a few weeks. So the government has to have that base capability to be able to sustain the relief effort for a long period of time. And that is what I have been working on to ensure that your government has that staying capability to bring relief to 6 parishes and other divisions and constituencies in other parishes that are impacted. We don't have the exact number of persons who are impacted, but we can estimate that it would be somewhere in the region of about 600,000 persons. Now think of it. We have never had a sustained operational capability to bring constant relief effort to 600,000 persons and what that requires. So the planning that has to go into that for the logistics and management takes some time. In our case, only a few days before we can stand it up so that we can reach every crying baby who is hungry. So Commander Gayle has been tasked. The CDS already knows what her task is. They will be working together seamlessly under the administrative leadership of the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, former Chief of Defense Staff, Rocky Mead. That, however, needs to be augmented by best-in-class international support, and you can't get better than the United Nations. Last week, Sunday, I had a call with the UN Secretary General. The UN Secretary General is a friend of Jamaica. He has visited me a few times. We're always working closer together on climate change, on financing for development, and he does have a special place in his heart for Jamaica. And I said to him, what we needed was the best-in-class logistics capabilities. And within a few days, in fact, yesterday I had a meeting with the Deputy Secretary General in charge of these kinds of operations from UN Ops, and they are mobilizing a full team that will come and support the logistics and management efforts of ODPEM. So yes, we have capabilities, but as I have said, no matter what capability you thought you had, when you are hit by a Category 5 storm, right, you must get even greater and better capabilities. And so UN Ops is here. I know they have had several meetings with private sector, I believe, civil society, and they will be embedded in ODPEM. And the idea is, after this experience, the technical know-how and capabilities will be transferred to ODPEM. So we are expecting that after this, ODPEM will be even stronger in terms of its ability to manage large-scale disasters. At that point, I would segue into saying that international support for Jamaica's relief and recovery effort is significant. I don't want to call everybody's name now. I leave the Minister of Foreign Affairs to give a comprehensive review of all the countries that have reached out to us. And I've had direct conversations with several world leaders about how they can help. So the relief effort is obviously being supported, but the conversations have moved past the relief stage now, where we're talking about recovery, and that's where I am engaging several world leaders as to how they can play a role in the recovery from the disaster. You would have heard me say in the presentation to Parliament that the damage could be anywhere from 6 to 7 billion US dollars. That is a conservative estimate. I have seen one economist saying something much more. I don't want to be alarmist. But we're going through the process of trying to assess the damage. But it is one thing to lose the physical assets of production, which, by the way, if you were to compare the disaster of COVID to this disaster, we didn't lose any productive asset. In this one, we have lost productive assets. We have lost farms. We have lost businesses. We have lost schools. And we have to go and rebuild them. You have to put on top of that what it is going to cost to sustain the relief phase. What it's going to cost us for debris management. Major part of the operations. What it is going to cost us to sustain the food packages. There's a notion that we're getting a lot of aid and that will carry you through. That will carry you for a couple of weeks, if so many. We are going to have to put the budgetary allocation to carry the relief effort, and that is going to be significant. Then there is the cleanup operation, which is a quite separate operation from debris management. Because once you move away the debris that is the initial debris from the storm, then now you have to go and figure out to clear roads, to move all the debris of houses that have been blown down, and everybody will soon start putting their old beds and couches and old fridge and everything is going to start to pile up. So which is why we have indicated that we will have a national cleanup week. It might very well stretch into months because the level of debris is significant. And how that is going to be disposed of and the cost of that is something we will have to address. And then we have to figure out now the parallel systems to get people back into school, to get hospitals up and running, to get businesses running. All of those come with a cost that we will have to foot. So in addition to losing your productive capacity, you now have to take on expenditure that you did not budget for. So the 6 to 7 or $8 billion, that's just what we have lost. What we have to spend additionally, we are in that process now of totaling it up to see what it comes. Then the recovery phase. All of that. So I want Jamaicans to understand the magnitude of the problem. Why am I saying this? How you feel will largely guide how you act. And there are a lot of people out there who are deliberately creating misinformation. And my job is to give you the correct information. If you choose not to listen to it, that's your business. but at least the correct information must be out there. I've seen someone say, Prime Minister don't like criticism. Nonsense. Not every opinion makes sense. I am not one who fears criticism, but there are people who fear me when I respond to them. Be assured that I will respond to any nonsense that is put out, not to be distracted, the critical ones. Because managing information is also an important part of the disaster management. If you allow people to cast your nation into despair and grief, to smother hope, to ignore the heroic efforts that people are making, and to just focus on the negative, then we'll have a negative outlook in a time when we need people to be positive in their outlook about our recovery. So I ask all Jamaicans of good mind and goodwill to stand up to those who are seeking to become popular on negativity. Outside of that, there has to be a critical focus on the re-establishment of normalcy. Now, even though we have broken up the emergency management into phases, it doesn't mean that everything happens sequentially, that you have to come out of the planning phase before you enter the relief phase, before you go into recovery. And no, what we're trying to do is do everything almost simultaneously. So even though we are in the relief phase, we are already planning the recovery phase. And a part of that is to restore normalcy. We want normalcy in electricity, normalcy in telecommunications, get the roads back up and running. That's, one indication of normalcy. But an important part of normalcy is to get commerce up and running. Now, as I toured through Jamaica, and I intend to go and visit some more of the areas that are hit, but I had to break that to make sure that the organization and strategy and policy is effective. What is clear is that local commerce has been badly hit. The local shops are closed. The local pharmacies are closed. Markets are closed. We need to get those stood up. The private sector has a role to play in that, and I see where they have started. Getting the gas stations open, ensuring that the large distributors are open, the large supermarkets and wholesales are open, especially in the urban areas. I like that. But I also want the small shop in Adelphi or in Spring Mount or wherever else, that those shops reopen. Now, they can't reopen for one main reason. They don't have electricity. That's one. And the second is that supplies can't get to them. The distributive trade, which, by the way, is an incredible logistics operation. They supply thousands of shops every day with trucks going all over Jamaica. That has been hit. And they can't call to place orders, and some of them can't access cash. So I've asked the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce to develop a plan to support the small shops in communities right across Jamaica to get them up and running. One of the first things that we have done is we have identified some generators, and we're going to make those generators available we're going to start with 50 in the most impacted and remote communities. We will loan them the generators. But of course, there will be some requirements for compliance issues and to ensure that they are established operations that we can enter into cooperation with. So, of course, we would have to verify that they are a legitimate operation, so we would ask the JPs, the police, and other established persons in the area to vouch for their credibility. And we're going to ask the Jamaica Business Development Corporation to lead that, along with the DBJ. We're going to also ask them if they would be willing to partner with the government to give us storage capacity. Some of them may have a strong room. They may have a room or two where we can store things. That would multiply the number of areas that we have from which we can stage operations. Because right now, CDS tells me that they have 22 staging areas that they have established right across Jamaica, which will be a hub and spoke operation. So they will move from big warehouses to these small hubs, and then from these small hubs to smaller areas of distribution. That might not be enough. Eventually, we will have to move from this operation of us moving items. So we move from main warehouse to these spoke and hub operations, and then we distribute. The physical distribution of the relief is an expensive operation, and it poses some risk to us as well. I've seen videos circulating where I've seen a Jamaica Defense Force truck and people are there waving, and it wasn't too bad. But even in a disaster, we must maintain our dignity. Even in a disaster, we must never give the view that there is lawlessness, and even if we are hungry and there is suffering, we must maintain our dignity. And the way in which the relief operation is done must be done in a way that protects the dignity of the people. So a part of what we have tasked ODPEM, JDF, and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to ensure that there is this standardized process that protects the dignity of the people that we're giving aid. But as I was saying, we can't carry this on forever or for too long. At some point, we will transition to a voucher or a coupon system where instead of carrying the bag of relief items, you will get something that is equivalent to cash, and you can go to your nearest shop in your area where we will stock and supply them, and you get your items. But to do that, we have to stand up those shops. We have to provision them, give them electricity, give them internet connection. And so we're working on that plan, and in the coming weeks, you will start to see that plan come to fruition, so that for the foreseeable future of the next few months, there is an effective and robust system to deliver relief as we pivot to the recovery stage. I want to thank the members of the media who are here, who have been covering the disaster, who have been faithfully attending these press briefings, and the media who has carried the press briefing, because that's very important for the informationalization of the citizen. And so I want to thank the journalists who are here and the media, which is privately held, and they are sacrificing their advertising time for this, and I want to thank them for doing that. So, in summary, there's no question that the initial relief phase started off a bit slowly, but I did some research this morning looking at the initial relief efforts for COVID, not for COVID. COVID was quickly, but for Katrina, for other major storms in the region, and Jamaica has done well. I mean, in 5 to 6 days, what we have stood up is incredible. This is not to say that there isn't human suffering. But please don't mistake me. But if you compare to Puerto Rico, to Antigua, to Dominica, and to the United States, which has had several major, that we have done is incredible. So as of today, the communities that we have not reached yet, the persons who are sending me messages to say, hey, I haven't gotten, the system will now respond and will respond quickly to get into those communities. So at the time of my next update, I should be able to say of the how many ever number of communities affected, this is the percentage that we reach. The target now is to get at least initial welfare and humanitarian response to every single Jamaican who has not yet gotten attention. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I think there was just one thing I needed to give. I know when Minister Tufton was speaking, he had given an email address. Let me give you the email address to use. It's healthhurricaneresponse@moh.gov.jm. So that's healthhurricaneresponse@moh.gov.jm. Now we're going to be opening up for some questions. I should note that our Ministers of State are here. They're in the room too. And I see Minister Mackenzie, Minister Morgan. I'm trying to go around. There are a lot of people in the room. I'm just acknowledging all of you. And we have cabinet. So let's go quickly to the questions. Can we have everybody just do one question, please? All right. Mike.
Dion Jacksmiller, TVJ. The changes that were announced to ODPEM seem designed to allow ODPEM to do exactly what it was set up to do, which is lead effectively from the front. But what we've seen over the years is an organization that seems to have been weakened, no permanent head appointed for an extended period of time, and ODPEM publicly sidelined during periods of disaster. So aren't the changes, even taking into account the excellent capabilities of the JDF, haven't these changes been made necessary because the office has been so weakened?
Okay, PM is going to answer. I was going to answer too.
You know, ODPEM over many years developed a sterling reputation for disaster, preparedness and emergency management, and several of the heads of ODPEM have gone on to play leading roles in the Caribbean. There is no denying that over time, that capability and prominence was not as it was in previous times. There are several factors that contribute to that. One of them would be the level at which the executive leadership was remunerated. In other words, you know, for a job such as what is the task of ODPEM, the salaries did not keep pace. Because just from a competitive point of view, if you want the best people, you have to pay well. And the best people are being competed for with other entities all over the place. So Jamaicans who have the capabilities are being pulled all over. And so even now as we speak, ODPEM is still in this process of the compensation review. And that, in a sense, is probably the main issue. We have had several disasters before, and you know, so if you were to say, how would you judge ODPEM in preparation, in standing up the preparation for disasters? I think you would say that the preparation for disasters went well. So even with not having necessarily the strongest executive leadership, we were still able to mount a credible preparation. During COVID, which was a kind of different disaster than what ODPEM would have been used to, ODPEM did not necessarily feature so much in the preparations, but they did come in and work very well in the emergency management, and not much credit has been given to ODPEM in ensuring that our BPO sector and some other business and commercial operations were able to operate. They set standards, they went in and inspected, they gave advice, they gave directions as to how businesses should be structured. That is not as forward-facing and recognized, but they did an extremely good job during that period of time. Granted, in COVID, it would have been the Ministry of Health that would have taken over most, for good reason, of the emergency management. In the other storms that we have had, the impact clearly is of no magnitude like this. The last one that we had, which was Beryl, exposed some weaknesses. And the government, therefore, took the actions of, one, doing a review. And persons were wondering, why am I doing a review? Everything you go do review. Some comments that I have seen. Yes, very important, because as your question would say, you know, does ODPEM have the capability to respond to a disaster like this? And I saw some weaknesses. I saw some gaps. I saw some spaces that need to be filled. But I am not the technical expert. So I asked someone who is an expert in this field, former Chief of Defense Staff, now Ambassador, to lead a team to review not just ODPEM, but the entire emergency response management of the government. And that report was very useful to us in what we need to do to make ODPEM the emergency management entity that can respond to a Category 5. ODPEM has never responded to a Category 5 disaster. And that's an important point to make. This is not a normal hurricane. So you can't judge the response of the government by virtue of what it has done in the past. This is a new level of disaster. And we need to empower, structure, support, provide the resources, and encourage and acknowledge the efforts of the persons who are now on the front line of Jamaica's response to the disaster. Thank you for the question.
All right, we have, I think it's coming down the line here. Oh, okay, all righty, on this side.
Thank you. Karen Madden, the Jamaica Gleaner. I do not see the Minister of National Security. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you have been briefed, or perhaps the Prime Minister. My question has to do with security in the shelters. We are getting reports that women have been sexually assaulted. I don't know if you have confirmed those reports, and if so, the steps you are taking to prevent this from happening.
Right. PM?
Thank you, Ms. Madden, for that question. No report has come to me. Yeah, we haven't received, I say Minister Mackenzie, who has some oversight of the shelters. We haven't gotten that report. I thank you for bringing it to our attention. If such a thing has actually happened, we will investigate. I'll ask you to give Minister Mackenzie the details that you have so we can investigate.
I don't know that it has, Prime Minister.
Oh, okay.
But we have received reports.
Yes, and PM
so you would have received a report that the number of shelters are reducing daily. Those that exist, so that you have raised it, we're going to Cabinet in a few minutes. I will raise it in the Cabinet with Minister Chang, and we will ensure that there is adequate coverage for them. I just make this appeal to every Jamaican. Yes, it's a difficult time. Yes, there is disaster all around. But now is not the time to take advantage of persons weaker than yourself. Now is the time to help and support and to show that you are a real man. Not by holding up people at gunpoint and taking away the relief that they are bringing. Try helping them through the obstacles to deliver the relief. That is how you're going to get respect today. There is no respect that you're going to get from brandishing your gun. And let it be clear, the police have not let up on their operations.
Thank you. And PM, if I can just note, that issue was brought to my attention, and there was a specific shelter that was raised, and I had shared it with the Commissioner of Police for them to investigate. All right, we're on this side now.
Thank you so much. Kalisha Williams, Television Jamaica. This question is for Mr. Vaz. As co-chair of the Recovery Committee, is there a schedule for the distribution of the aid that can be published? Two, I know the Prime Minister spoke to the systematic changes that will take place now in terms of the distribution of aid. TVJ News observed yesterday in Landilo, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Westmoreland, where people were throwing aid in bulk on the ground. Can you say what's the protocol surrounding this? What changes will be made going forward? And in regard to the 27 communities marooned, what's the plan to address that in terms of how soon will these people get aid? How soon will you access the communities? And finally, in regards to school, can I get a status report on the schools, the number of schools damaged, and what's the plan for students doing PEP, CXC? What's the plan for students in those areas who cannot go to school right now, both online or in person? Thank you.
All right, thank you for your four-part one question.
All right, the part that's related to me, I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to beg your indulgence for me to leave. I have to go and prepare for Cabinet. And just to say that at Cabinet today, we're going to be discussing the allocation of expenditures. Minister Tufton is quick off the bat. He has brought a quite hefty bill.
I have mine too.
I hear the Minister of Education under her breath saying she has a submission to make, and the Minister of Local Government. So I'm going to be scratching my head now to see how we can carve up that budget to give effect to the relief response. So you would have heard me say the dignity of the recipients of aid must be maintained. And in fact, yesterday we had an extensive discussion with ODPEM, and they will bring in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to establish or re-establish the protocols and standards by which aid and relief should be delivered. I don't think there is anything wrong with the formation of lines, and I'm not saying that these are the protocols. I'm just giving you my general view that there is nothing wrong with the formation of lines. There is nothing wrong in saying one line for elderly, one line for pregnant and lactating mothers or mothers with children, and another line for everyone else. There is nothing wrong with saying strong, able-bodied persons who are in the crowd, please come up and assist. There's nothing wrong with saying, where is the person that is the acknowledged leader of the community or a person who holds some office? Please come up and guide us as to who should get first. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that is the spirit. Rather than saying these are the standards, what I'm getting at is saying every Jamaican should acknowledge this as the spirit in which the relief effort is done. Now, Commander Gayle and Chief of Defense Staff Williams Gorman and Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles, they will come together and reinforce the protocols so that when the aid is being delivered, Jamaica doesn't look like, let me not go any further. We want Jamaica to look good.
We need to. I'll answer. Thank you, PM. I'll answer on the education one, which was around how many schools have been impacted. In the affected parishes, we have a little bit over 450 that have been affected, and that's across the board: infant schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and also 8 tertiary schools. So far, we've seen estimates of 616 institutions having some kind of damage. Sometimes it's just a leak. Sometimes it ranges from a leak to the entire school being destroyed. And so what we're doing, we have our teams out there. We have an initial cost, which is humongous, and so we're going to be trying to confirm that on the ground. The ministry team is already out there. The senior team will be out there. Our state minister and our parliamentary secretary will be going out too to get more assessments. So we expect that by next week we'll have a bigger picture, a clearer picture of what is happening with the schools. But almost every school got some amount of damage. All right, did we leave out any? Which one did we leave out?
In terms of the list, a schedule for the distribution of aid that can be published.
All right, Commander Gayle is going to answer that one.
More again, also, as it concerns the list, we are tracking a list. I believe you had asked if we'll publish it. So we are publishing that now within a very select group so we can manage how the information is flowing, particularly because the conditions remain significantly dynamic. We have the JDF, the Jamaica, the JCF. We have other groups working towards the areas. We need to establish, for example, landing sites for the helicopters and so on. So the list remains fairly dynamic. As things become more benign, however, we should be able to publish that on a daily basis. But we do have that within the JDF ODPEM system, and we're prioritizing those based on numbers of persons being affected, and also looking at how can we actually physically get to the sites. And so that's how we are structured now. And as I said before, it's an all-of-government approach, so we have persons on the ground, food for the poor, some of our, Samaritans, PERS, and etc., which are doing things for us. So we are able to push through. Wherever we can, we will get into.
And the plans for the 27 maroon communities, how soon do you think you can get access to these areas?
So we're out flying now. We do have several urban SAR groups on the ground working with the JDF and the fire brigade. So we are pressing every day to get that number down. As you can understand, the terrain is fairly arduous now. There's some flooding, there are some gaps which are to be bridged. We are pressing through that. I don't want to derail upon a commitment now, but we should expect at least on a daily basis, we should see 1 or 2 communities going down. What I'll also say is that as the weather conditions come in, so we'd have added 1 more community this morning due to rainfall last night. It became marooned again because of flooding. So it will remain a very dynamic situation. And as it goes along in that manner, you can understand the list of priorities will change. Hence why you want to kind of manage that now in a sort of a stovepipe before we start pushing out. Once it becomes really benign and we have full access, then we can start publishing our drop list. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a note, we do monitor online, and there are individuals who will online say this community hasn't been reached, and that's always fed in. Sometimes it's MPs that are sending a list, but people online are also doing it, and that gets fed to JDF, and they then do checks. So if you know of an area, you can reach out, and we will get to them, and we'll add them to the list. All right.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News. Question to Commander Gayle. We've been pretty much a little bit over a week removed from the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Now that you are in this new role as Director General of ODPEM, you spoke to it earlier in terms of things that need to be improved, but are there any specific gaps that you've noticed in this week of response that you think you can improve in your role?
I like the suit.
Mahiri, significantly, as we are in the recovery, we're in the relief phase, and one of the very prominent things is to be able to establish a huge logistics software capability, so we can monitor not only what is in our ODPEM stores. I spoke to the fact that we are establishing a significant logistics outfit that will need an entire new apparatus around it. So that's one of the very first things we're going to achieve, and I believe we should be able to achieve that in a matter of coming days, so we can actually look what is coming, look what is going out, look at resupply timelines, also starting to manage when are we needing to resupply persons we've already supplied. So in the immediate phase, that's one of the things we want to be looking at, whilst we kind of maintain the dignity of our persons on the ground.
A very, very short question to Dr. Tufton. In terms of the Western parishes, is there any update you can give on Hanover?
Yes, so the Noel Holmes Hospital in Hanover is functional. The A&E department was not impacted. The dietary maternity ward and the male and female ward had roof damage, and we had to do a makeshift arrangement for ward space in the passageway. The estimates have been done, and the idea is to address that facility. It's a small hospital compared to the others. The population is less. About half of the health centers in the parish have been damaged, and that assessment is being done. So the team is working. I've been there twice, and they're managing for the time being.
All right. Thank you, Minister. All right, Zara.
Zara Burton, 18 Degrees North. Good morning. I had some questions, but I don't necessarily know if anybody from the environmental sector is here. It has to do with just the decaying of carcasses and speeding that up. I went on Friday, didn't see any jonkers in the air, and wondered, on a serious note, if anything could be done about getting some jonkers in the area to take up some of the carcasses. also the number of persons and communities that are rising in terms of water, why those are rising, and how will that impact the rebuilding efforts if we have new water bodies? So just an environmental person would be good to have on the panel. That's just a comment.
Okay.
The questions I have are for the commander of ODPEM. Death toll, Dayton Campbell in the Parliament raised the issue of how are you counting, and the issue was brought up by the PM of indirect versus direct deaths and that kind of thing. Just wanted to understand, how are you actually counting deaths? That's number one for you. And then two is in terms of the money that's flowing into ODPEM for the accountability watchdogs of us that need to know, for instance, how much came from this country, how much came from that country, was it kind or was it cash? Would we be able to get a running tally of how much money is actually coming into the country in addition to the support jamaica.gov.jm portal? And then three for you also. In terms of the relocation of, my grandmother's nurse brought this up yesterday, the relocation of people in those areas where it may be a struggle to either rebuild in their communities or they're in desperate straits right now, evacuating them into shelters in Kingston like the Arena. Is that something that you are exploring, especially even from a learning standpoint? Are you getting people or taking people maybe even into campsites around the country that have dormitories that could relocate them temporarily for like a 6-month period in shelters, and maybe even be allowed to plant stuff so that they can generate a livelihood and also boost output like the Prime Minister had said?
All right. Commander?
Fairly long questions, but I think I'll take the last one first. So as we get into the recovery phase, that is something we'll be robustly exploring. I believe there's a subcommittee of council that is directly treating with that. So some of those plans will start to come out very soon, but it's not something that is void of our thought in the impending situation. Could you repeat your first question in summary for me?
Death toll, how are you?
Death toll, how are we treating with it? So by and large, the Ministry of Health and Wellness is plugged in daily to the National Emergency Operations Center. We do have the fire brigade, we do have the JCF. So we are sitting there and determining out of those figures and the reports that come in, actual deaths related to the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Now the official source has become for us the PEC report provided by the JCF. So they do their investigations. Ministry of Health and Wellness is doing the matters concerning pronouncing the number of dead. And then we look at those in partnership, we make a determination. A determination now, as at very early this morning, was 32. There are some matters that have come into us. Those have been looked at, and we'll publish new updates as we get them.
No, but are those considered direct or indirect and direct?
Some investigations, as you understand, will have to take place sometime after. Some will be very hard to determine right now, but the investigations through the JCF, they will treat with those matters. On the back end, I'm very, very sure we'll be able to disaggregate quite properly.
Okay, and I'm not really getting a response to the question about how you're counting, so if there's any way you can get some clarity and come back to us with a firm, how are you counting in terms of direct and indirect? For instance, if somebody goes ahead to try to get aid in a hurricane and they die, are you counting them? I'm just wondering, how are you counting? It's really important, and if we could get a list of the people that have died for accountability purposes as well.
On the matter list, I'll defer to my more senior experts, but I believe we might be keeping that directly here. But we'll come back with some matters as we work through the problems.
Okay, and then the third question?
I believe I answered that one on the first.
The money coming in. Money, how are we going to
the money. That was the second question.
The running tally of
the running tally
from various.
All right, so we are keeping a running tally. There's also another subcommittee that will be looking prescriptively at how we'll be managing that for the accountability portion of it. In terms of making the funds public, I'm sure that somewhere down the road, those figures will become public. But there will be a significant management framework around it to be developed.
All right. Just to note, I can guarantee you that there is a running tally in the ODPEM. There is a huge spreadsheet of everything that comes in, everything that's been approved. Remember, before any aid shipment comes in, even if it's for an independent entity, they have to share it with ODPEM. So they send the list of items that are coming in, an estimated cost for the items coming in, and all of that is held. On the Support Jamaica site, we do get an update on that each morning. If you want me to give you that, I can give you. I just need to find it. But there is serious accountability there in ODPEM. I think that framework was actually quite robust in its establishment. And so at the appropriate time, I'm sure Command, as he gets more integrated into ODPEM, will be able to give you that running tally. And it's also in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They deal with a lot of the aid that's coming in from bilateral partners, so other countries, and also the multilaterals. That is, they have their own system of accounting for all of that. So all the information is there. And so there will be a time for us to just present everything. This is all that we got from everywhere. I know some ministers have to go over to Cabinet. JPS, you have a question already. So if you have to leave, but let's take the last, okay. His hand was up first. It's been up for a long time.
Morning, everybody. Andre Jebinson, CVM News.
Yes.
Is there a running list of the number of people who are unaccounted for? Because we hear about the deaths, but we do not know if there are people who are missing at this time. Secondly, could you tell us if the country is any closer to drawing down on the $70 million CRIF, or if there are any delays there?
All right, on the CRIF, I'll get back to you on that. But as you know, there would have been a press release that came from CRIF that said it was triggered. And so there are a few, obviously, paperwork to be done. We are hoping that within months we'll be able to draw down on that. But as we start that drawdown process, we'll come to you and let you know how it comes. Does it come in tranches, or does it come all at once? We will let you know.
So to the extent that persons report into the NEOC or the Ministry of Health and Wellness's EOC, there is a running list of those persons who are missing, consequent to reports coming into us. So that does exist. I have to double check.
All right. Okay, yes.
Thank you. Asking, can we be given a list of the communities that are still marooned?
Yeah.
Whether or not food drops are taking place there, and if so, when did those drops start, and how regular are they? And then as well, I heard the announcement in Parliament about the Joint Select Committee. I heard the announcement of the private sector committee, that coordination committee, but I'm still asking, why not an independent oversight committee to monitor implementation and expenditure?
Yeah. All right. So in terms of that question, that's one that the last one, on the governance framework. That is going to be discussed in Cabinet, and we started discussing it last week, and then there was also some indication from PM about putting in accountability structures. There are different ways that we can do it. I mean, we've spoken about the National Partnership Council, we've spoken about a committee of Parliament, we've spoken about many different things. And I think we're going to have another opportunity today in Cabinet to discuss what does that governance framework look like. And remember, there is the relief phase, which is what we're in now, and then the recovery phase. I think that's the one that's going to really need that kind of overarching body, because we're going to have to be asking some real serious questions about ourselves. Where do we rebuild? What do we rebuild? Given global warming and climate change, is it fit to put back communities where they were? Do we move them from where they were? What are the new building standards, and just generally accountability over all of the insurance money that's coming in and what we're doing. So that conversation that you're raising is actually one that we're having in Cabinet about what does this governance framework look like. And so you will be hearing more as the Prime Minister and the members of the Cabinet discuss that.
Marooned communities.
Marooned communities. The list, I think Commander Gayle had noted that there is some fluidity to that, and that he has given assurance that he will put out that list of the communities and the drops and the food drops
taking place, and if so, when did they start? How early did they start, and how regular are they?
Okay, you can come. I know they're every day. they're very frequent. Yes.
So food drops have started. There is a running list today. I was trying to bring the list up now, but I believe of the 27 communities, we've been able to reach 22 thus far. So there is a running list, and we're doing food drops. We're trying to regularize the cycle, and surely we should be able to put something out.
Can you tell us when the food drop started and when can we get a list?
When they started, the moment we started flying, which was the day after the passage of the hurricane. And the list, I won't promise you a time now, but to be expected shortly.
All right, we're going to have to wrap soon. I know there were 2 questions that I just needed to give responses to. There was the question that had come on sexual assaults at shelters. There was a specific one that had been referenced online. The Commissioner of Police has said that they also got the report. I gave them, but they got it before me, and that they are currently investigating, and they'll get back to us later today. On the environmental questions about John Cruz and the others, we'll try to ask our environmentalists in terms of what's the best thing to do with animal carcasses and so on. And we'll get an answer.
Just wanted to add one bit of information based on the questions that have been coming. Over 300 hours of flights coordinated between the Jamaica Defense Force and the U.S. military. That equates to over 100 drops over the last 7 days. And that does not include the other 15 helicopter assets that are being used by international charities, charitable organizations. That's just specific to the 6 from the U.S. military and the 6? 6.
They didn't come all at once.
Right. So you'll recall also that the U.S. came in phases. Right? They didn't come all at once. There are 6 here now, but they didn't come all at once. So that's even more to show the efficiency of what's taking place in terms of our over 20,000 packages, and that's just from the government apparatus. Each package for a household is for 7 days. So it's a lot of logistics and planning to make sure that when we drop, that family or that recipient has food for 7 days. The family has food for 7 days. So just wanted to add that to give you an understanding of the magnitude of what is taking place in our beloved Jamaica in today being the 7th day since the hurricane hit.
All right, we have to close. I'm seeing a message that they were needed in cabinet, but let me have the last 2 questions over here. I see 2 hands. We're gonna just take both, and then we give the last set of answers. Microphone, please. Trying to get the mic up.
Testing. All right. Went again. All right. So I know there's a little disquiet about changing the leadership at ODPEM at a time like this. Could you expand just a little bit more on the disaster management experience that Commander Gayle has? And can you specify what role Mr. Thompson will have during this period, given that he has been acting at the ODPEM for quite a while, and before that he was deputy?
All right. I won't be able to answer all of that, but I can ask the commander to give you his CV. But just noting, I've worked with Mr. Thompson quite a bit as ODPEM head. In terms of when you're communicating, you have to speak to the head of ODPEM a lot. And he has worked hard for the country. And the Prime Minister has noted that last year there was an assessment done of ODPEM and the entire mechanism. It wasn't just ODPEM, of the entire disaster response mechanism. And a report was provided, Cabinet looked at it, and it was clear that we needed to look at ODPEM and look at executive experience. One of the things I know that the Ministry of Labour had done was to, not Labour, the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development had done was to start the process of rescoping the job description for the head of ODPEM, recognizing how important that role is, and also noting that the salary scale had to change, and PM did answer that question. And so what's happening now is that process is still in train, but it was felt that we needed to have greater synergies with the JDF, and having a commander who was already leading in the Emergency Operations Center. Remember, I told you, he was there in the center. He was one of the leaders in our Emergency Operations Center. Was the best thing to have that synergy now. In terms of Mr. Thompson, he is still a part of the ODPEM team. I think he is probably a permanent member of staff. I would have to check that and get back to you, but I expect that he would still be there and still serving. There was another question, yes. And that's the last one because we have to wrap.
Thank you so much. Going back to my point about schools, I don't think you answered the second part of the question. In regards to, similar to how we have like field hospitals.
Right, okay, I'll answer that.
Students were supposed to do CXC and PEP. What's the plan to continue learning in those areas?
All right, so we have encouraged schools to open. And I know on Tuesday there were over 100 schools that had opened. So those who can should open. Obviously, we need to have water at the school and it needs to be a safe environment. But what we're going to do is to prioritize children doing exams, whether it's external in relation to CXC or CAPE, or if it is PEP exam. So while I was in St. Elizabeth, the principals were saying that they are getting schools back. It may take a while to get everybody in, but the priority was for those who are doing PEP and those who are doing CXC and CAPE, CSEC and CAPE. The other consideration for us and what we're starting to look at, as we're looking at temporary shelter for people, we're also looking at temporary school structures because we may have to use tents. We may have to get makeshift structures that our students can continue to learn in. So we've started that process. And so as the work is happening, and I've already spoken to Keith, he's looking at clear areas where we can put temporary housing, shelter. And I've said to him, while you're doing that, look for spaces that could house a temporary school structure. So we're doing that work now, and the ministry is working hard to figure out the damage, because some we can put tarpaulin on the top and we can get them open. And so we're going to be flexible as best as possible. But really for us, our goal is to get as many schools back. And I have the head of the Independent School Association here. They have been hit too, the independent schools, and we've committed to supporting them because the entire education system is important to us. And so, yeah, we're going to be flexible and everybody's going to be at school, but it will not look like school, regular school when we start back. All right, and so those were all the questions. There was a lot, and I thank the media for coming and for asking your questions. And just know that we'll continue to do these updates. We'll try to make it 2 or 3 times a week. You'll have Commander Gayle here. You'll have all of the relevant persons responding to your questions. This is a moment of crisis for our country, but it's also a moment for us to show who we are as Jamaicans. And we are a strong people. We're a resilient people. We're a God-fearing people. And we know that God is going to take us through this. And so as we go out there, I know there's a lot of sadness, especially for those who lost their loved ones or who lost so much in the hurricane. But let's help everyone. Let's be positive, and let's always remember to place all of our fears and troubles in the hands of God. He is never going to stop listening to us. And so as we close this morning, we again say, God bless every Jamaican and God bless this country that we love so much. Thank you.